Hey, Michael.
How you doing today, Coach?
Oh, man. I'm pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing great, man. Just sipping on my decaf peppermint tea.
Whoa. Decaf peppermint tea.
Yeah.
Interesting. When is this like a seasonal thing for you?
No, this is it's a new thing.
Oh, well, I mean, so same difference. Same difference.
Yeah, it's just a different week for me.
Are you
trying something new?
Are you trying to wean yourself off of caffeine?
Well, yeah, I just had to back off, man. It's there's no weaning. Sometimes I just get a little bit overboard. Yeah, I've been kind of, like I told you, a little bit off since doing Ironman Louisville, and so a little bit sore, just not feeling it. And the more I get into caffeine, the worse it seems to get. So I'm just
Interesting.
trying to level it out a little bit. Yeah. So speaking of Ironman Louisville, this is a triathlon podcast.
Yes. If this is your first time listening, this is a triathlon podcast.
Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast.
Yes. Like water, with poor vocals, zero consistency, and the occasional tri-talk.
So we got should we read that review real quick? Because it is a beauty. I mean, it's a beauty. It's something I would have been proud of, actually. It's so kind of like, it's just like walks that fence beautifully, kind of like slamming us, but kind of not. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's like it's a 3-star review on iTunes. We've gotten a lot of really good 5-star reviews, by the way, but this particular 3-star review is titled He says it's by B.A. Laramir,
AKA Confused Caster.
And is that Confused Caster?
Yeah.
Or TRS.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding. They're probably not. Anyway, he says, or he or she says, 1 star for sound quality, 1 star for consistency. I mean, come on.
That's the part that ruffled my feathers. The rest I could really care less about.
That's what I mean. That's why I think it's pretty. It's kind of a sweet dig if they know. But hey, what
it is a pretty sweet dig.
We have not missed in over a year. I mean, that's about as consistent as I've ever been on anything besides like waking up.
Right.
Okay, and 0.5 stars because it's mostly about triathlon. So we got 3 stars because they rounded up.
Which I can appreciate.
Yeah, which is very nice, actually. There's too much rambling banter and too many cliches for my taste. I would recommend at least listening if you're into triathlon. It may work for you.
Best line.
It's pretty solid, man. Best
line of the review. But hey, we fixed it. We fixed the title of the cast. It's now, this is a triathlon podcast about triathlon titled The Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast.
Which is what it's always been titled.
Right, but, we want to, be transparent and clear for, people who might just, spin the wheel and pick a random episode to listen to, and they may have popped up on the Dogcast. Or
yeah,
but yeah, it's funny, but hey, that is why we on occasion ask for you to give us a review if you want, regardless of if it's 1 star or 5 stars, because it helps people, if they read the reviews, recognize even further what our podcast is in fact about.
Yeah. Evidently, it helps us understand what it's about too.
Yeah, it helps us learn about our listener. And, if you're out there, stop listening.
All right, so I'm not going to talk about basketball much here.
Well, yeah, I can imagine why.
No, there's a tie-in. It's a legit tie-in.
Okay.
It's a good thing. It's really good. Okay, so as we know, my Badgers have been struggling. Very, very troublesome season. Mightily. We lost 2 of our top 3 guards Friday on one day for the season. They're young as it is. Anyway, but last night we squeaked one out against Western Kentucky, who is actually really good. They beat Purdue. They're like a veteran team with a bunch of transfers. But the point of this whole thing is not that. Afterwards, I kind of get into reading about post-game stuff. I'm just sort of like geeky that way. And I happened to stumble on a podcast that I listened to, and they interviewed one of our guards from last year named Zach Showalter, who was a hardcore, walk-on guy that made it. He started his last 2 years and had a good career at Wisconsin. But they were talking to him, and they were like, "What are you up to now?" And he said, he goes, "Honestly, I'm training for an Ironman. I got the bug. Me and my fiance are training for Ironman Wisconsin." So,
wow.
One of my favorite players in Wisconsin history is now training for Ironman Wisconsin, and I got to figure out how we can get this podcast out to him. So if any of you guys know him or know what's going on there, let's just see what we can do there. We'd love to contribute to his success.
Yeah,
and his
learning and knowledge. Exactly. Yeah. But make sure you give him a caveat that when you send it to him that this is in fact a triathlon podcast.
But he also might like it because it is a little bit about basketball.
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally. So you've there's a couple things I want to dive in today. I definitely want to retouch on what we had talked about at the end of Monday's podcast. I definitely want to cover that at some point today. But I think this might be a good segue to it. Is this lingering? I don't want to say sidelining effect, but this lingering kind of fatigue / just quote unquote not feeling right that you've had since Louisville, and what you think might be the underlining cause. Why do you think it's been more sustained than it has in previous ones, or is it and you're just kind of noticing it now because you're trying to not take as much time off? And what are your thoughts on that? And because I'm sure a lot of people have it. I think some of it is you may have always felt this way. You just didn't know because you never tried to really hop back into things as quick as you have this time. So that might be a difference. But I think a lot of people struggle with that off feeling. And I want to just kind of get you some feedback from you on a little more in depth on that process.
Yeah, let's be clear. I mean, I think Amanda posted something about she went to and got her, checked out at the doctor, and everything is really good, looking good, and she feels great. And you posted something to the effect of, this whole thing is about your health, right? And I mean, that's what it comes back to, is you should be doing everything you can to feel as good as you can all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really what this is all about. And I mean, I think you're right on. I think that I've probably mostly felt this way after doing Ironman. Generally fatigued. It's a cumulative fatigue that just catches up, and on that particular day, I just, you throw balls to the walls, and it really takes it out of you. I think, partially it's my age. I mean, I'm not super young, but I mean, I feel good for my age, no doubt about it. It's just that, historically, I've never been an endurance type of athlete, and I think on Ironman race day, I go out way and above kind of maybe my training sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just sort of sets this general fatigue. But it's also, I mean, it's always kind of partially mental because, I've had, I had to regroup after this one, and I'm not as jacked up about coming back at it. You know what I mean? So I have been more concerned about just finding my health barometer and just feeling good again. And so I've been trying to keep it going, but I've also kept one eye on this whole all right, dude, just it's better to be happy, healthy, and wise than it is to be deconstructed and trying to fight through for something you're not even sure you're going to go for again next year. So it's a step back.
Do you think that plays into it at all? Like or is it like one of those chicken before the egg, or egg before the chicken kind of things? Like you're uncertain about.
That was a cliche, by the way.
I know. Sorry again. Damn it. I hope he doesn't hate analogies either, because analogies are like half our podcast.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, is it like, do you feel like some of the indecisiveness or uncertainty about what you want to actually do next year is part of kind of the funk, or do you think the funk is the reason you haven't really had any certainty about what you may or may not want to do next year?
Well, it's always probably a little of both, but yeah. I got to be honest, there's something to be said. I mean, we've been doing this podcast a year now, and there's a certain part of me that's actually starting to get more excitement about other people and their successes. And, can what we've been through and what we're going through help them get to this place? I've done 5 years in a row where I've done an Ironman, which is like something I never could have dreamed of 6 years ago,
Yeah.
And I'm kind of feeling like I don't want to say I've plateaued, but at least mentally I think I have in some ways, as far as like, do I think I have what it would take to actually move the needle into the area where I would hope to ideally get to with my Ironman racing? I don't know right now. And again, it's just sort of at least not falling backwards and sort of staying on the same path a little bit, not losing it. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm definitely not signing up for anything, in the next couple of weeks. So, but yeah, so I think the funk. Yeah, I mean, it's just this time of year sometimes, and, all those kind of variables come into play. It's not really like, nobody's around, nobody's really training, whatever. You got to kind of pick your battles. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think let's say, do you think it'd be the same thing? Because I'm always jealous of athletes that live in like a really warm climate. Mm-hmm. That like this time of year is like nothing for them. Like they don't even really know what the trainer is unless they just want to get in like a purposeful workout, like without like worrying about traffic, or just doing something like, incredibly structured and want to just zone out with their headphones in. Like, because I was having this kind of a back and forth with an athlete before, is like, do you think it's the isolation that is that makes this time of year the hardest for a lot of people? Is the fact that like there's no group things, there's no like, I mean, at least where I am, there's definitely no group rides, and even if there was, I sure so wouldn't be participating in them in 30-degree weather. So you think it's just like that? It's a lack of, because we all do it in some way, shape, or form, get energy from other people.
Yes.
And I know that you spoke about it previously, like over the summer and the build up to Ironman Louisville, and so did I, that how even though like putting on our camps here in Nashville was incredibly tiring because of just the days that we put in and how consecutive they were, and then the conditions that we had during them, but we always left there feeling like way more energized. Like it wasn't the you think about camp, or you think about doing a quote unquote training camp, and you think of like, I'm going to really, really dig deep, and I'm going to like be hurting so bad that I'm going to probably want to need a break when I get back. But the opposite effect happened.
Yeah, it did.
It was more energizing. Like, when you're around awesome people and they've got all these same goals, I mean, it was energizing within each group, and other people energized them to go out and do other things and kept them motivated. It energized some people to sign up for races that they hadn't even anticipated. Like, it was that effect. Do you think that's a large part of it?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, in my daily life, that's, I mean, if I just, like, I'm working at home a lot, so if I get out and just go see people, that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fact.
I know. Yeah.
There's just different energy fields that you run into, and when I'm just sitting, you're training by yourself, and I mean, it's like, running or training with other people always brings out a better side of you, I think, 99% of the time. And same with like just the race energy that we talk about. That energy is real. I mean, there's energy from other people and training with others is huge. I think, like my historical patterns have been wrapped around this idea of training solo, and like, because it does make you, I think it makes you tougher on some levels, but at sometime you're just going to be like, damn, you just can't find it. Yeah. And other people bring that in. So yeah, I mean, I think just isolation in general is a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know that, I mean, some athletes I know for sure, like they get this, I think a lot of people do to different extents, they get this like euphoric endorphin rush, like a difference from running outside versus running inside on a treadmill. Like, I think everybody does. Like, no matter how cold or how hot it is, like, it's just like being outside and running is like the greatest medicine of all. And you have a lot of athletes this time of year who, frankly, sometimes like it's just not even an option. They're getting so much snow and it's so nasty that it's just like almost pointless. Mm-hmm. I had an athlete reach out to me yesterday, and like that was the kind of the genesis of our conversation. Was like, I just haven't been able to get out. Like, I haven't been able to get outside. You swim inside. You're on the trainer inside. And then now, God forbid, you're stuck on the treadmill inside. Mm-hmm. And it takes isolation to like a whole new level. And, what I'd suggest to her, is among a couple other things, was just like, just get out. Like, if you're in somewhere and the climate is just like piss poor and it's snowing and it's sleeting and you're like, I could go run, but I'd be running like 14-minute miles, being so careful on the sidewalk because it's, it's hard as hell to walk in snow anyway. Mm-hmm. Put on your snow boots, put on something heavy, and go for a walk. Yeah. Like, just being outside in general, even if the conditions like look what you would say is like not favorable conditions, it's always better for most times. I think 9 times out of 10. Of course, there are always some outlying circumstances. But just to get outside and feel it and feel that energy, and I think a lot of it is just like is you connecting and getting some energy from say like Mother Nature when you can't get it from other people. I think there's got to be a way where we can all, safeguard against those things. I think that's another reason why like software programs, virtual worlds basically like exist, like things called Zwift, or as some people call Z-Swift, where you can like basically go on group rides indoor in like this virtual world. You still feel like some sort of connection, albeit different than an actual face-to-face. It's still like a connection. And I think that's like for a lot of people that helps them this time of year. But I think just doing things, even if it's, if you have the choice between doing a dreaded like 30-minute treadmill run that's going to make you hate it more, or going outside for an hour walk in the snow, go take the hour walk in the snow. If it's going to safeguard you from hating the next week versus just not liking the day, then I think that's kind of one of those things where, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier and you brought up, is that like, seriously, this whole journey that you're on, regardless of what it is, or the distance, or the year, or whatever it is, it's all about being healthy and happy. That's it. Yeah. And because that always leads to consistency and doing it more and doing it longer, which obviously circles all the way back. It makes you healthier and happier. And so if like you have to do different things to protect and safeguard, like that is of the utmost importance. And we find this so many times, like we're so in just like decision making, like this time of year, especially like I have this week, I think it's been like the first week where I've really been able to see like the seasonal, the seasonal wellness bug really hit a lot of athletes. Hey, I'm just kind of feeling sick. Okay, I'm going to shut you down for a day or two, or you're going to take it easy for a day or two. Like probably 5 or 6 people. And it's like and for the motivated ones, it's like, well, I'm just going to power through today, and they'll sacrifice the next week just to grind through today. It's that long term. It's that long term goal, and we don't think about it with health sometimes. Like, yeah, but if I miss today, I'm going to ruin my long term goal. But it's like, don't sacrifice long term goals and long term health for short term ego or short term anxiety about just missing one day. Because usually when you dig too far into the well, especially when you might be coming down with something, then a lot of times you might get to rock bottom, and then getting out of some like horrible sickness takes 2-3 times longer than it ever would have if you had just decided to just take a day, or 2 days.
Yeah, like you always say, you're not going to lose your fitness over the last 8 months in a day or two.
No.
So it's regarding that outdoor thing, it's one of those things that we know, right? You get outside, get some fresh air. It's sort of like, thrown around like it, just becomes part of us. But I don't think we really remember that as much as to how valuable that can really be. Just getting outside. I mean, a little thing happened to me yesterday. I was working on videos all morning, and I was just kind of like, it's kind of gloomy out and gloomy in and everything. And I just decided to take the trash out. But I walked out in my bare feet and shorts, and it was a little nippy. Not cold, but it was too cold to be walking around too long without shoes on or whatever. But yeah. I did 3 trips to the garbage with boxes and a bunch of other stuff, and just that little thing about putting my feet on cold ground and walking around outside and feeling, I felt like different when I got done with that. It was the weirdest little thing. So I always look at that like dog walk. We always talk about walking the dog or whatever. It's just like, take an hour walk out there. I mean, that gives you a lot more than you think. I mean,
I think it's twofold.
Mm-hmm.
And at least, for, people who like pets, it's kind of like covers both things that you mentioned in kind of in a way that we could understand it, I guess. But you're getting something for yourself while also doing something for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But this just happens to be your dog, which right. I think most people that are pet owners love their pets and animals just as much, really, to be frank, more than they like humans. At least you should. I know I do. I mean, I've got a dog, and there's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for her. But, like, you feel good about doing something for your dog, taking it outside, seeing how happy they are, and you're also good at doing something for yourself by getting out and getting fresh air and being energized, and then also knowing that you're kind of doing something for another individual or animal, however you want to look at it. But you get that connection, you get that energy, and you get that like motivation from somebody else, which is kind of the same thing as camp would be. You're doing a lot of work and you're putting a lot of effort into other people while you're still outside and connecting and energizing. Then you leave it way more energized mentally and emotionally than you were before. Although you might not be able to match it physically, it's still there and it's still a driver. And I think that's like the really hard thing is when you physically have it, but you don't have the mental and emotional drive, or you have the mental and emotional drive and you don't have the physical drive, and because you're rarely going to always match them up. But it's that fine line between how can I prime one of these 3 or whatever to get me to a place to where I can at least, give myself a benefit that's both, physical and then also mental and emotional. And that's why I think, again, this year is so difficult. Part of the year is so difficult.
It's part of the year. Yeah. And
it's part of the year.
And back to that cold factor, it's, we're in Nashville. I wouldn't consider this like super cold, but it gets cold, 30s, 40s. And we're so afraid of cold. And I think cold is probably one of the most healing effects that we can put on our body. And I mean, once you get out, I mean, because when you get into the cold, you don't think about it, but it's sort of, you have to kind of, your body has to work to stay warm, and it works parts of your body that you don't ever really get to work, and when it's hot out. So it kind of wakes up your organs, and it kind of like makes your whole system sort of come together and work in ways to kind of charge your body. And I think it's just good to be outside. You don't have to always run and, or do whatever. If you can do a little hiking or walk around or just be outside. I mean, that was sort of my life growing up. There was nothing better than playing football in the snow for like an hour, and you come in, you just feel amazing. And I don't know, if there's obviously you're playing and you're with your friends and stuff like that, but there's something great about coming in after being out in cold and sort of just being in the elements. It's sort of like the thing about, I really sort of love when the water at a race is kind of cold temperature. I mean, I think I hated that first time I did it, but the fact that I did that, and I think our race temperature was in the, mid to upper 50s, the water, it was so unbelievably cold. But nothing wakes you up like that. Nothing kind of snaps your system into gear like that. I mean, it's just, you just have to do it. And I don't know. I like cold water stuff, and I can never do it as much as I like to, but, like things like cold showers and things like that just really can set you into a different place.
Well, they make you feel more alive.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, your senses are just like all over the place, and I think that has a lot. It has a lot to do with it.
It pumps your blood. It forces your blood to get to work and warm it up, So, I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, the walking the dog, that's what I mean, I think, a little bit about, well, I like the idea of helping others, too. That's kind of where I'm finding my joy a little bit more through this podcast and through all the people that are joining and coaching and coming to camps and things like that. That really is sort of driving me a little bit more, I think, than my personal goals right now.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully my personal goals just become a byproduct of that in some way.
I mean, I think that's like a really, really good answer. For everyone, is like, I think so oftentimes we get lost in this trap or this mindset of expectations that in order to be in this sport and be healthy and happy, in order for me to be that, my results have to be way, way, way up here, or I have to have these like astronomical goals, because everybody else does, and they all want to do this and they all want to do that. But like, isn't a huge part of so much of what we do and why we got into this is finding things out more about yourself, finding things, connecting with other people, and like it's so what's better? It's kind of like the same analogy, and here we go again with analogies. It's like, the person who, trained for an entire year for their 5K and, did it in, 50 minutes versus, and the journey that they went on and the accomplishment they feel to finish on versus the guy who, the guy or girl who just woke up and was like, I can just kind of do this because I've got this talent,
mm-hmm.
and went out and ran. Like honestly, who's going to feel more accomplished?
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with the time. And so I think going back to what you said, it's like you may not have a goal out there. You may not feel quote unquote on because you say you feel off, but maybe you are on. And it's just you feel off of what you always used to think equaled the perfect place, which was being in the zone and always hitting workouts and having these like, huge goals. If it's, and that's the thing I think we often forget is like always ask yourself, like so many times we either live in our own past, whether it's personal, professional, or athletically, and then we project to where we want to live in the same three areas, personal, professional, athletic, and we never really just understand and accept where we are at the moment and enjoy that. And so for the moment, like your life is totally different than it was when you first got into this.
Yeah.
You work for a different company. You and I are doing this. You've made different friends. Like, everything is different. So those things don't have to always mirror each other. And so maybe like you're talking about your journey and where you are now, and like it does seem to be like that you are in a really good place. And I think other athletes could take that and kind of run with it too. Is just like, well, you don't always have to like assume or accept that you should always be where you used to be or where you always want to go, because more oftentimes than not, if you're at least being present in the moment and you're at least acknowledging where you are and accepting it, then a lot of times that's kind of where you need to be anyway. And so maybe this is like, maybe you are on, and maybe it's more connected with other people and getting energy from other people and helping other people with their goals. And as you, because we're always growing and evolving, always, in this kind of a sport where I think it leads just as much to, as if not more than others, like this self-exploration of like, what am I capable of? What do I really truly love? What do I really get the most out of things? And I think we always get into this in like a selfish way because we want to finish something or we want to do this. But I think what you find is that like the people you connect with along the way, like the friendships that you make, the gratification you get from helping, like those are some of like the most like the happiest I hear some of my athletes when they send me a text or a phone call or a training piece comment. It's like, it's not when they hit a PR. A lot of times it's when they like, yeah, there was this guy in the pool next to me who was really struggling and I took time to help him out.
Yeah.
It's those things that where we connect and like give back. And so I think that's like a huge part of it. So maybe, maybe that's just part of how you're evolving. And it's like, it doesn't have like the definition of success or the definition of being in the quote unquote zone is always one of those things that's going to be fluid. And I think that it takes experience, and I think it takes a lot of, self-awareness to acknowledge that and then be okay with it.
Yeah, it does. And it's a maturity thing. I mean, like, yeah, you get into this because you want to change yourself, and you want, you sort of have this vision of who you want to be or who you think you can be and all this sorts of stuff, and you start pounding away and hammering away at training, and things are changed and you feel different, you feel good about your life and everything like that, and then the next step is like, how do you give that back? And you have to heal, and you have to bond yourself together, and you have to grow as a person in order to be at a place where you can give that back to someone else with clarity and stuff like that. And it's a change, and it's a life change, but it's sort of the most important one, I think, because I'm the same way. I always feel better when, whether it be like, so many people want to just drive and say, yeah, like I have a video business on this. I've had one for 2 years, and everybody's like, you need to charge more, you need to do that. And I'm like, you know what? I feel better when I just kind of help people. I get a fair rate or whatever, and I don't have to do more. I don't have to charge more. I feel worse, because there's something about building good relationships, because usually those people come back to me and give me another project, and it's fair, and I don't know. I just think that this idea of always like, carving out a few extra bucks here and there on everything you do, or sneaking in, I guess it can kind of apply to workouts too, just like sacrificing, something you should be doing with your friends or whatever to go an extra hour. I don't know. I just think there's always better long-term benefits in building relationships, helping other people and stuff like that, and how can you give back? And that's why,
But it's your definition of value,
right? Well,
like, it is. I mean, in the same way, like you get like, and that's how I kind of see how I handle and how I approach coaching. Like, am I the cheapest rate on the block? No, but I'm way cheaper than the majority of coaches and way more affordable. And I am that because I just like to work with people, and I get like the value I get in the feeling of accomplishment I get has nothing to do with dollar signs. And it has to do with people. And like, I feel like grateful and thankful and honored to work with so many athletes, because listen, a lot of times I get way more out of them than they get out of me in terms of fulfillment and just like what it does for me in my life, and like the connecting with and like meeting some people. So like that's the value for me. And that's what I kind of heard you say about like, the money aspect. It's like, if you can do 1 or 2 or 3 more shoots, like you like that connecting, and you get something out of it that doesn't pop up in your bank account, but it shows itself in more positive ways in your life than what your checking account balance is.
Oh, for sure. And it just, like it keeps you more active. And you're so right about what you talk about with your coaching, because you just, I really, the connections you build and the relationships you build and everything like that, it's just, it's just like, we all have to kind of offer our services in some way or another, to work and live and things like that. So how do we break that down, and how can we really enrich our lives through what we're doing? That's what it comes down to. And the more people we get involved in this, the better off it is for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, it's not about just like, writing that one hit wonder and then just, wasting away into the ether after that. It's about continuing to write the songs, it's about the process and keeping it going and enjoying it. And these things are also transferable to working out and training and things like that. I mean, that's why, like, sometimes these ballistic, epic workouts can just really derail you. It's like you can always do more. You can always push yourself further. And sometimes we just do it, I don't know why, just to leave a stamp. And that stamp becomes, in a way, it's sort of like that when I do Ironman, when I'm not ready for it or something. And I go out and I prove it and I show up, but man, that really leaves a scar.
Well, that's the society we live in. It's like, there's, and nothing against it, but there's I think even like an apparel line or a hashtag. It's always like beat yesterday. Like that's not really reality. Like you're just not always going to beat yesterday. And when you like, instead of having the mentality of like beat yesterday, how about you just be the best you can today? And whatever that equals out to, then it equals out to, because that whole beat yesterday thing, like, I mean, I get what they're kind of trying to do, but it goes back to that, more oftentimes than not, expectations are just future resentments. And that's what, if you don't beat yesterday, then you failed. Well, every day is different, and your best is going to be different every day. And that's really all that, if you can lay down your pillow at night and think, what, I did the best I could today with what I had to work with, then who cares? Because the results are always going to change. They're always going to be fluid based on, a million different factors.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, you have to, like, really safeguard against getting way, way up or way, way down. Getting into, like, the obsessed nature that every day has to be, and it will continue to always be this great. And then when you have that one day and it's not, you all of a sudden think it's over.
Yeah.
Or you have 2 or 3 bad days in a row, and all of a sudden those 2 bad days in a row turn into 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks turn into 2 months.
Hey, let me ask you this about that. When you said you lay down on the pillow and you want to say, I did the best I could today with what I had or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we should always just say that every night? Because, you know what I mean? It's like, because we're so hard on ourselves in general. So, like, let's say today I have I thought I could have done a bunch more stuff and did or whatever, but I just, for whatever reason, couldn't. It's like, what? if I could sit down at night or lay down at night and go, you know what, I had these ideas, these goals, I was going to do this, but I didn't, and that's okay. I mean, I didn't have it, because if you go to bed with a feeling of like I didn't give it my all, or I didn't do what I could have, or what I was, then it sort of like carries over. You know what I mean? Then it's like we got enough pressure on us. We're human beings, and there's a lot going on, and everybody's problems are different, and everybody's challenges are different, but they're all relatively sort of the same. And if we can just forgive ourselves when we go to bed, or at the end of a day, if we didn't crush a workout, or we skipped a workout, or we didn't do certain things, it's like it's all right.
I mean, I think a lot of times we forget that like how you end one day often has a huge impact, whether we like to think about it or not, like how our next day starts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I mean, even like to what you said, like should we say it every night? Like I don't do it every night. I'd be lying to you if I said I did. But like when I first started getting sober, like in the big AA book, there's actually an entire page that talks about this.
Okay.
And it basically just says, like, when we retire at night, and this is something you say out loud to yourself, or you say to somebody, we always did it to other people, but it's like, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe someone an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person? Were we kind and loving towards all? What could we have done better? And then were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? And then you kind of just like basically, and there's more to it, but it's like basically just like a self-check, like review of how did I do today? Mm-hmm. It's like not going to bed. Like, they tell couples all the time, like, don't go to bed mad at each other.
Yeah.
Like always, self-check. Do you think you owe somebody an apology? And like, it's always easier to do that. And I think that like with training and with life, there's so many parallels to both. It's just like don't. That's why I try to sometimes disconnect athletes with like the numbers and data. It's just like they will almost always lie to you, good or bad. Like, and don't let numbers or some watch that's got computer chips and wiring inside of it tell you and decide for you how you feel. Like, you should be able to tell you how you feel. And like by going out and just like that was and you can be surprised or be okay with it. Like that's something that I've like so much of what I've enjoyed about disconnecting and like is I'll go out for my runs almost every morning and I'll just cover up my watch. And I won't even look at it when the lap split comes. And I'll get done and I'll finish and I'll look at it and I'll either be shocked because I ran faster than I thought I would, or I'd say, oh, that's about what I thought I would. Or it was like, yeah, that's probably right. Like, but that's all I had in me today. Like, I still got to enjoy the whole run. I still got to do it for the reason, which is just doing it because I want to get better, and that's what's on my plan for today. But I get to decide whether it was my best effort or not what the numbers say. Not what Training Peak says, not what Strava or Garmin Connect or all that kind of stuff says. Like, I get to decide if I did my best today. Whether it was doing 20 minutes of a 1 hour workout, because honestly, that was all I had to give today. Because sometimes that's all we have, because other things in life pull us different directions. And it's like, okay, then that was your best. Like you like numbers and all those other things that we use all the time. And like, that just doesn't get like, stop letting so many other things dictate how well you did that day or how great it was. Like, whether it's at work or in your personal life or like, athletically, like, you tell you how you did today. Yeah. And be honest with yourself. And whether it's, because that's like another thing, it goes both ways. If you did your hour workout and you just, decided to loaf just because you wanted to loaf, but you still had a good time, was that necessarily your best?
Yeah, I don't.
And so it goes both ways, and it's hard, and it's something that I think everyone battles every single day. But it's ultimately I think something that at the core of what we do and the direction we're trying to go, we need to do our best every day to try and get there. And, and that's why getting, we always say, like, don't get too high, don't get too low, if you can. But those are still two really difficult things to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be honest with yourself, right? And I think that what you're talking about there is, like, say if you did an hour workout and you kind of know in your heart you loafed it or whatever. So it's like, what's the difference? I mean, guys like Michael Jordan, they're always, you know what I mean? They don't need to be training with somebody. But if that hour workout you just took that you felt like you loafed in, and maybe you and I were doing it together, there's no way we're going to loaf, So that's the other piece of there. It's like the connective piece and doing stuff with other people and not being in isolation and stuff like that. Isolation's hard, I mean, certain people like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, they can do these things because they are driven by their why is like, undefinable to most people. I mean, they become the greatest at whatever they do. And most of us will not even approach that level, but sometimes we have, hints of it where we can work out and do our things together or by ourselves and excel and take it to that next level. But again, it's just like being around people. But that's
why.
What?
That's why they become who they are.
Yeah,
we had like a thread in like, our closed active athlete group and then Corey CC said something like, yeah, I thought it was always be like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And yet everybody in the world used to just want to be like Mike. And then you had Kobe Bryant who said, F that, dude, I'm going to beat Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things always, he's a very, unlikable figure to some people. But what I always liked about him was just how relentlessly tenacious he was and unapologetic, that he just wanted to be the best no matter what. And even if you didn't like the way that looked, he didn't care. Like he was driven to succeed. And like you said, like that being driven to succeed can look different for everyone. It doesn't have to look the same as, as so-and-so. Like our journeys all look different. It's just, I think we get caught up in how everybody else, markets their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes we get attached to judging ourselves on our own journey because it doesn't look the same. And not every ending of a journey, like there's probably a lot of them that are very similar. None of those journeys actually look the same. But I think that we see so oftentimes with social media and stuff, it's just like, well, look what they're doing. And that's how I should get there. My journey doesn't look anything like that. So I wonder if I can get there. It's just it's that self-doubt, the part that I think really hinders a lot of people from, continuing to move forward in the journey because it just does look different. But that's also what makes it so great, is everybody has their own story and their own chapters that are wildly different from everyone else's, even if they're all trying to find the same ending.
Yeah, your story is important. It's unique. It doesn't have to be someone else's, and I think we get confused by that a lot. Like I don't know. I learned a long time ago that people, like, every once in a while you see a random post of somebody, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, their life seems amazing. I mean, but you haven't heard from them in 2 months. But all of a sudden, it's like all of a sudden now it's like, man, I wonder what they're doing. But clearly they are just living life and taking pictures at concerts and doing whatever they're doing. It's like, man,
and fancy food.
Food. Why can't I live like that? Well, you probably are.
That's the thing, and that's the same thing about like overnight success. Is like a lot of people like the exact same with like us mere mortals that aren't like professionals or famous or celebrities. This is like, I mean, I would I'll just use myself as an example. I'm sure some people are like, oh yeah, but without knowing in basketball, like, yeah, you've got it pretty good. I'm like, yeah, well, do you want to trade journeys?
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of people would probably politely decline.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's like, it's like, that's why, like what you said, like, I love that. Like, your own story is the best story.
Yeah. It's a lot more interesting than we think. We'll put it that way.
Oh, for sure. And like, that's why, like one of the things that we do on our closed Crushing Iron group, and then we do, I think, sometimes in a little more detail in our active athlete group, is like people just like really, really open up. Mm-hmm. And most times, like, yeah, my story's not like most people's. That's because all of our stories are unique. But like to hear like all the different places people come to, and it's like, man, it's seriously. And we talked about it, I think, on one of the very first podcasts we did. Triathlon is like one of the greatest melting pots of sport. Mm-hmm. Where you have different people from basically every single type of background and experience and everything, and that's why it's so awesome. Is that you all get to just like arrive at the same ending, which is like what we'd say like is a race, and every single person's journey has been different, and that's why it's so important. Like we used to joke about, like if they on Athlinks, when you looked up a person's time, it gave like their whole life story instead of just their time. Because mm-hmm. then you probably wouldn't compare so and so's results to so and so when you've got a mom or dad with like 4 kids, working a job, super stressed, and it's coming off an injury, versus the single guy with no kids, no family, 9-to-5 job, and unlimited expense account. It's totally different. And I just, we always have to, like you said it, it's just your story matters, and your story is the best story because you get to decide how it ends, and you get to be part of how it's written, and you get to, more oftentimes than not, include the characters that you want in your story. And if you don't like a certain character, then write them out of your story.
Yeah. Yeah, the power's there, man.
Yeah, and I'd love to say it's as simple as that, but it's not. it's freaking hard. But that's what that's what makes it. That's what you see when people cross the finish line. Mm-hmm. Like that's what you see. You see the ending of their story, and you see on their face like the energy and like the courage and the tenacity and like the pain. And sometimes the suffering, and then the overcoming. Like, that's the joy that you see. You don't see, I just hit my 13-hour goal. Or that may be an inkling of it. That may be the first, facial expression. But the emotion that you see from it is, hell yeah. Mm-hmm. I just got to write that story. It's not the ending. It's just a chapter. But damn it, I love it. And it was painful, and it took a lot of hard work, and some days were crap, and some weeks were crap. But I got back up, and I kept going after it, and I kept writing because I didn't want my story to end like this, or I just didn't want this chapter to end like this.
Right.
And that's the most important part, is you don't have to let the first page dictate the rest of your chapter, or a chapter define the book. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, there is no way in hell I'll let, the worst chapter of my life define the ending of my book. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should either. Anybody should. We always have the power. We always have the strength somewhere inside of us to rewrite it, or not necessarily rip up a page, because you always learn from it. But, like you said, like your story is the best story.
And this is kind of a good way to tie up your first question to me, I think. When you talk about chapters and writing chapters, and in a way, I feel like in some ways I've been sort of writing the same chapter over and over since I wrote the chapter to get to my first Ironman, and that what it took, that kind of journey, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, starting again, kind of doing the same thing and writing the same chapter, and it comes out with a similar ending.
Right.
And that, what that's showing to me is that, you don't grow without challenges. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of been morphing every year, kind of redefining the same challenge in a way. And I feel like something has been missing a little bit, maybe in that. And so I've got the last 4 or 5 chapters I've written are basically the same, and they just don't feel like they're doing much for me. So That's just gonna. I mean, I have no answer for that right now, but it's something I might reflect on here after we get off. And
that's really good insight. Yeah. I mean, I think we all do that. We overlay, like, you basically, like, in terms of, like, back in school, we'd always have to, like, write these, like, numeral or, outlines for our paper. And you just kind of and I've done it before. You wake up and you're like, well, let's see. This is the outline I did for the last paper. I'll just use it again for this one.
Yes.
But right now and that's what this time of year is for everybody. Like, now is the time. Like, a lot of people think of this term as like the off season. We always say it's Q4, but it's not. It's actually the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what you do and the decisions you make now and how you prepare now is how you will start the book that you'll finish next year. All the work, all the rough drafts, all the whatever. That's now.
You're outlining that.
You're outlining it right now, and I think that's awesome insight. Like, that's, if you continue to use the same outline and you get the same results, maybe it's not your writing or your purpose that needs to be changed. Maybe it's just you need to change the outline.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe regardless of what the ending is, you'll get more fulfillment out of the chapters in the book. Every year we'll call it a book, or every year is a chapter. Like, whatever you look at it, like, you'll get something different out of it, but it's because you chose to have a different outline.
Yeah, that's food for reflection.
Yeah. And if we have any English teachers out there, hit us up. I'm sure I could use work on my outlining skills.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of exciting. It's daunting and exciting, and that's just it, man. You can write your own chapter, and we just forget about how accessible that is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so easy to. I mean, a lot of people are doing the same things over and over and getting good results and that are happy with. Maybe that's it too. That I just haven't found that solid outline that I can adapt and grow from. So.
Yeah, but I agree. But also, to the same extent, you just did that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we find a recipe and it's good, and we just choose never to tinker with it again.
Right. Yeah.
So you're always, your good turns into fine. And I think but the most exciting thing is, like, trying a new recipe. Like, even if it doesn't taste like as perfect, a lot of times it's that experimentation process or that tinkering, within, like, a certain guideline or a certain outline, if you will, like, that gives you, like, this, like, invigorating feel of, like, not an adrenaline rush, but, like, yeah, this is a little bit different. Like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I don't really like it, but it's different. And things like that are what really lead to growth for most people too.
Yeah. And then you ask, well, why does everybody have, I mean, I think growth is an innate thing that humans have to do to be happy,
Yeah.
And that's why, you always hear business growth and people always grow, but that doesn't always have to just mean, money. That's why I look at that business thing. It's like, Jesus, how do we grow? And that doesn't have to reflect straightly on how do we make more money.
Yeah.
I'm talking about corporate, vernacular that I listen to every year. So how do we grow? Well, we grow by cutting out a whole department. It's like, what? I don't know. Well, maybe there's an analogy there. Maybe I just got to cut out, a whole part that's not working for me.
Yep.
And then I can grow and do something similar, but from a completely different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, you got anything else you want to say here, man? I think that ties it up.
I think that did tie it up. Yeah, I am still working on a few notes and things for the podcast that we talked about on Monday, doing for sure on athletes that struggle with, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD. There's a couple more notes I wanted to get into and get on paper before we attack that subject, because it's only a delicate subject if you make it one, to be honest. we all struggle with things and stuff. So, but I want to make it. It's an important one, and so I don't want to do it half-ass. Mm-hmm. So, if you're, we're expecting that to be today. I apologize, but just know that it is on there. It will be done. I would say next week. There's just some more thought and detail and preparation I wanted to put into it before we record it, and because it's super important. It's important to a lot of people, and so I think that justifies and earns a little extra time and preparation to make sure everybody gets hopefully something out of it.
That sounds good. You're shipping.
Yeah, gear should be here tomorrow. Gear, baby. Visors, hats. We got 3 different colored visors, 3 different colored hats. And they are, from what I've seen in the images, pretty sweet. So those come in tomorrow, and I'll be trying to get those shipped out ASAP. So people can get those in before Christmas and rock those. If you're interested in what they look like or purchasing, you can go to crushingiron.com under gear and check those out and place your order. Camps, if you're looking at any camps next year, swim camps, both swim camps are getting very close to being full. The triathlon camps, April is now sold out. June is now sold out. So August is the only remaining one. If you were looking for a challenge, if you were looking for a 4-day mini chapter to find out and do things and be surrounded by people that are going to be energizing and encouraging and really galvanize your process to whatever it is you have late season, August, September, October, November, it is a great opportunity and a great place. And there's more information again on camps, swim analysis, coaching, all those things on our website at crushingiron.com. And if you have any, more detailed questions, feel free to email me directly at c26coach@gmail.com.
Right. And come on to our closed Facebook group if you're not in there. Search Crushing Iron Group. Send us a request. We'll get you in there. Come on and introduce yourself. Meet some cool people. If you know Zach Showalter, send him our way. Mm-hmm. Former Badger basketball player. We're really sorry about talking about triathlon all day. We'll try and get that back in order.
Yeah, we'll curb it. We got a pretty cool guest interview coming up here shortly in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, looks like it.
It'll be pretty fun, and then some other cool announcements coming around the corner.
Yeah.
So
we got a couple big announcements coming in January.
Yep. Fun.
Or at least one.
We always have a couple.
We have a couple.
Yeah.
All right. That wraps up the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast. Episode number, I think, 119.
Love it.
How's that for consistency?
I'll give it a 1.
Give it a 1.
I give it a 1.
All right.
All right, man.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
See you, dude.
Write a new chapter.
I will.
See ya.